Ma'am, are we good to go?
Yeah, go.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am Aryan Gupta, the host of today's session, and I, on behalf of the whole Just Corpus team, welcome you all in today's session on Supreme Court Law Clerkship tips, and strategies to crack the exam, hosted by Just Corpus. Before we delve into today's discussion, let me provide you a brief introduction of Just Corpus and the eminent guest speaker of the day. Just Corpus is a body of legal professionals who have come together to bring various aspects and chains of law under a single umbrella. Just Corpus, an edtech platform set up in 2020, has a wide reach of 600,000 clicks per month on an average basis on the website. The inspiration was derived from the ever-growing need for law students. Just Corpus has also incorporated an interdisciplinary journal and a multidisciplinary journal as its subsidiaries, named as the Just Corpus Law Journal and the International Journal of Law Research, Education, and Social Sciences. Now turning our attention to today's focal point. We are privileged to have Ms. Prerna Deep as our esteemed guest speaker. Ms. Prerna Deep is an advocate and academic in criminal law. Currently, she works as an academic fellow at the National University of Law, NLU Delhi. Alongside, she holds the position of an associate coordinator at the Center for Criminology and Victimology at NLU Delhi. She is the recipient of British Council Great Scholarship for pursuing an LLM in criminal law and criminal justice at the University of Edinburgh. She holds LL.B from CLCDU and English honors from Miranda House, University of Delhi. She has also worked as a Law Clerk-cum-Research Associate to HMJ Aniruddha Bose at the Supreme Court of India for 2 years. She has authored several nationally and internationally published research papers, book chapters, articles, and blogs. Some notable mentions are Legal Dilemma, Regulatory Offences, Finding its Position in Criminal Law, published in the King's College Student Law Review, United Kingdom, and examining the and another notable piece is examining the immunities of a former head of state in international criminal law, published in the Edinburgh Napier Student Law Review, UK, and also diminishing the spotlight of trial, the scope of plea bargaining in the criminal justice system, published in the Durham Law Review, UK. So, without further ado, I would like ma'am to give her insights on the topic of today. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today evening. Before I begin, just quickly checking in that you can see my PPT, my screen.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you. So, yes, welcome all of you who are here to understand about the Supreme Court Law Clerkship Program. So how this session will work is basically this is like a quick guide into the Supreme Court Law Clerkship. We'll start by understanding what is this role, Supreme Court Law Clerkship, about the scheme, about the eligibility criteria, about the pattern of the exams, quick tips on how you can prepare for it, what kind of resources you should be using. Then we'll move to what are the career options after you've pursued your clerkship, what kind of roles you can expect during your clerkship, and then then I'll take on a few questions. And I also have a list of questions that was shared to me. So yes, this is how we're gonna briefly get into today's session. So I hope everyone finds it informative enough. So yes, 1 second. My introduction is already done. So I've also done some Supreme Court Law Clerkship webinars very specific to universities. Now heading to, yes, what is Supreme Court Law Clerkship? So basically, Supreme Court Law Clerkship is an entry level into insights of the judicial system. You will be assisting the Supreme Court justices in their day-to-day work, which would be about preparing the law briefs for them about the cases that come to Supreme Court, any research work that they assign to you, and also invest and help in the jurisprudence development of judgments that come to your particular bench. So it is an all-encompassing experience that really helps you own your legal skills, your critical thinking, critical writing, your research skills, and I will deal in further towards the end of the presentation, the session, on how these skills can help you in your future jobs as well. So quickly looking at the scheme at the glance. So basically, What you need to understand is, firstly, when you are associated with Supreme Court as a law clerk, you cannot take any other engagement. You cannot be practicing as an advocate during that time. You solely report to the Supreme Court and you'll solely be employed with the Supreme Court. Another thing that you need to keep in mind, this is a purely contractual job in nature. And then it is about a fixed term, which is primarily a year, from which starts like July with the new session and ends by the summer vacation of the next session. So it's one round year. And of course, it can be extended depending on your performance and the person you're working with. If they feel like you're capable enough, your term can be extended up to 3 years. So what this year's scheme will do is a panel of approximately 90 candidates would be engaged as Law Clerk-cum-Research Associate in the Supreme Court. And your remuneration would be 80,000 per month for the assignment for the term 25 to 26. Now, in the next slides, we will be looking at the details of the examination pattern, the minimum standards, terms and conditions, and all of this is also available in the scheme of engaging Law Clerk-cum-Research Associates, which is available at the Supreme Court website. So if you haven't already seen it, I must recommend you to go through it and check the website. So the part 1 and the part 2 of the exam would be conducted in the same day. There will be a short break between the two exams, but they would be held at the same day. So the part 1 is the objective examination and part 2 is the subjective examination. And they would be held in in 2 sessions at 23 cities. As you can see, I've also enumerated which cities they would be. So the written examination, as you can see, it would be done on 9th of March 2025. And then the part 1 will be conducted in online mode, and the question paper for part 2 examination will be visible on computer screen, and you will be writing the answers in pen and paper mode, because as I told you, it would be a subjective examination. In terms of what would be in the part 1 examination and what would be in the part 2 examination, again, we will come to it in later part of the session. So the model answer keys will be uploaded by 10th, and it would be available till 11th. For any online objections that you have, there's a small charge taken. If you think that the question and the answer that do not match, you can apply to it, object to it. And then if your objection is found to be valid, that fee is refunded to you. Now, like I mentioned, if you have not already look up the Supreme Court website. It will have the online link, which you're supposed to go and fill up the registration form in. The online registration started on 14th of January 2025, and the candidate is required to pay a fee of 500 plus whatever bank charges it is. So yeah, it is still live. So if you want to apply for this semester, I mean the coming term, you must apply because they are soon closing their scheme and the sessions online exams. Now, looking at the eligibility criteria. So, A, you must be a law graduate. You will have a law degree. B, you can be a final year law student, as you can see in the point number 4 here. So if you're in a 5-year, you can be law program, you can be in your 5th year. If you're in a 3-year law program, you can be in your 3rd year. And you'll have to furnish a proof that you're in a final semester, and only after result gets out and you pass will you be able to join the Supreme Court. In terms of age, as you can see, you have to be above 20 years and 32 is the maximum age as of 7th of February 2025. You must have good research skills because, as we already know, this requires a lot of critical analysis and research. So you should have research skills, analytical skills, writing abilities, knowledge of computer, and of course, using all these databases and search engines because you'll have to work with a lot of case laws on a daily basis. So these are the basic eligibility criteria. Now we come to the part 1 of the question. So as you can see, The total duration of part 1 of the exam would be 2.5 hours. There shall be a negative marking, deduction of 0.25 marks for each incorrect answer, total 100 marks, and these are MCQ-based questions, which shall include relevant provisions of statute wherever necessary. So now, as you can see, you will have the following questions in the part 1 examination. A, the reading comprehension passage, which any entrance exam, if you were prepared for and appeared for, you would know you would have these English comprehension passages. And then the objective type questions on the basis of those English comprehension. So this tests your language of English, your understanding, how well can you identify and see facts, which are all relevant and transferable skills and legal aspect as well. Then you will have the objective type analytical question, testing the ability to understand and apply the law, which primarily includes the Constitution of India, CRPC, CPC, IPC, Indian Evidence Act, and the Contract Act. And the third part would be the objective type questions on recent developments in law and jurisprudence in the last year. So you need to focus on the case laws and other legal jurisprudence that has developed over the last year for the third part of this. So primarily, these are the type of MCQ questions that would be available and for you in your MCQ part, 2.5 hours and 100 marks. Moving on, we have the part 2, which is 3.5 hours and 300 marks. And part 3, as we already discussed, that it would be a pen and paper mode, so you would be writing these questions, answers. So the first question is brief preparation. In this, you are required to prepare a brief synopsis of a case file in no longer than 750 words, which is approximately 2 sides of a single page. And you would be provided with a copy of an SLP or a criminal appeal or a civil appeal or a writ petition. So the copy with all the facts and all the information and the impugned judgment, everything will be provided to you. What you would be required to do is sieve out all the relevant facts and information and legislation and capture all of that in the under 750 words. That is a challenge, of course, and that tests your ability to sieve out, if you can, an amount of files and pages, figure out what is important. So that would be your test for part 1 of brief preparation. Part 2 is preparation of a draft research memo. In this, you would be required to formulate a draft reason memo, again, not no longer than 500 to 750 words, which is again approximately 2 sides of a paper leaf on the dispute. This would be for 75 marks. And the third part is analytical question. In this, you would be required to answer 1 out of 5 analytical questions in about 350 to 500 words. So these questions can be on development of legal jurisprudence in recent times, or they could be based on a particular statute, or they could be based on some facts. Totally depends on the question, but yeah, you have quite a choice. So do 1 out of 5 analytical questions. So what these subjective question answer are trying to look is not just the descriptive part of how well you know the law or the statute, but also to test your analytical skills of how well can you present it in a second and in a concise manner within both the time limit and the word limit given to you. So this might require some practice if you have never prepared any of this before. A lot of you might have prepared brief during your internships and otherwise, so it would be a bit easier for you to understand what is expected out of you. If you have never prepared any of this, then this might be a little challenge and you might want to focus on it because it carries a lot of marks. Now, coming to the interview. So once you're selected in your objective and your subjective test comes the third stage, which is the interview stage. So what you want to keep understanding in the interview is basically you should be professional. You should be dressed well in your advocate attire. Um, Understand the code. You should know every fact, every facet about the Supreme Court. Communicate clearly with the panel that's taking your interview. Know your judges. So basically, what this I'm trying to say with this is understand the latest and the landmark judgments given by the judges of the Supreme Court, and specifically by the judges that you have filled in your preferences for. So after this, we'll come to the stage of the selection process and all of that. But this is just to clear the idea of, okay, what is in part one, part two, and the third part, which is the interview. So yes, know your judges, know their benches, know their judgments, know what is their area of specialization. Go prepared. Now, in terms of questions to ask, of course, what questions can you ask them? So think about, don't ask questions just for the sake of asking something, but at the same time, do not hesitate to put forward your point, your view, or something that needs to get clarified. Stay calm and composed, because throughout your work at Supreme Court, there will be so much high pressure and so many times when how well you carry forward your calmness would be checked, and that is also something that would be analyzed during the interview about, even in the most strict and tough and Herculean situation, how do you keep calm? Because that is a really important trait. Then comes your personal experience. So what that I mean by is like, know your CV well, everything that you've written in it, your internship experiences, if you've mentioned any article, any laws, or whatever work you've mentioned you have done before, just ensure that your experiences are well accounted for and you know them to share them at the interview panel. The last one, of course, like with everything, you must practice interviewing as well. You can take up mock interviews online, or you can just practice interview with your friends, or even if you just want to practice like giving answer, you may do it in front of a mirror. It would be really helpful. But then, yes, like if you've not interviewed enough, or if you are hesitant about it, if you're just scared about it, do not shy away from practicing. It would be really helpful. Yeah, so moving forward, I'd like to explain how the selection process works. So basically, the first stoppage or the first part would be the 40% minimum marks or the cutoff that the Supreme Court registry would take out for the part one. So the MCQ would be corrected first. And as of now, you're required to get minimum 40% marks in it. Or if the Supreme Court registry wants to keep a cutoff that they will later take out for the exam, they might change the 40% aspect to that. If 40% or whatever cutoff is released is not met by you, then your subjective paper will not be checked. So it's not both A and B combined that you have to pass separately. So you need to have minimum 40% marks or the cutoff set separately for the objective paper to even get your subjective paper checked and not automatically rejected. Now, if you've qualified the part one, then the part two, you need to require a minimum of 50% marks or again, any cutoff as may be specified. So for part one, you have 40% or the cutoff. Plus for part two, you have 50% or the cutoff. These are minimum qualifying criteria as of now. Now, if you have passed in both part one and part two, then the Supreme Court Registry will prepare the results of the written examination based on the combined marks secured in part one and part two. And the individual scores can then be provided to the candidates on the individual portal, and you can have an access to that. Then you can, meanwhile, you have access to your individual marks. The Supreme Court will also release a list of candidates who will be considered for the interview. And this would be according to the cutoff score, to the marks in part 1 and part 2, as we just discussed, how that would be taken out. Then, after that, the candidates qualifying for the interview would be asked to submit a preference list of the judge's office in a sequence of the choice under whom they intend to work. So, like I mentioned, know your judges. Because here, before your interview, you're required to put in preference for the judges that you would want to work under. So, for that, whatever your choices are, how you want to fill it up, whether you want to fill it up on the basis of seniority, or whether you've interned with the judge before when you want to work under him again, or whatever choice you have, this is the time where you fill up the preference list. And this preference list is filled up before the interview stage. Now, the preparation strategy. So basically, it is very important to understand the exam pattern and the syllabus. Like we just discussed, the exam patterns, the objective type, 100 marks, 0.25 negative marking. You will have English comprehension, you will have analytical legal questions, and you will have the general legal jurisprudence and recent developments of over a year. Supreme Court keeps sharing these case summaries and landmark reportable judgments. You must read the actual judgment and do not just rely on summaries. Last year, Supreme Court did release the relevant cases for the purpose of this exam. So keep a lookout in case Supreme Court plans to release it again this year. It might. So that is you understanding the exam pattern and the syllabus. Now categorize the topics by difficulty. So you know your strengths, you know where you stand. So categorize which subject, which topic you are lagging behind, or you would want to focus more on. Be realistic about it and then have your own preparation strategies, because it is easier for someone to give you a timeline and to say that, oh, in this much time or this many hours, you can be able to do this, but then only you know where you stand thoroughly. So categorize and be realistic about it. Now, comprehensive review, this is also about the fact that both after you've done your share of questions, you've done your share of reading, you need to keep revising and reviewing it. Otherwise, you will forget about it. Practice with previous year's papers and model papers. So, Supreme Court, if you don't know already, completely, to a large extent, I would say, changed the pattern and the scheme of examination of the law clerkship in 2023. So before 2023, the syllabus was also a little different and the aspects were also a little different. So the last 2 years' papers are godsend for you and you must do them completely and fully. And of course, you can look at the previous year question paper before that also to understand what was happening and just for practice. But then the last 2 years' papers are the most important ones for you. Of course, stay updated with the current affairs. When I say this, I do not mean just the static GK that is going around that would come in any competitive exam. I also mean in terms of the legal development and jurisprudence, landmark cases that is happening, any bill, any laws being passed. So this is with aspect to legal field mostly. Hone your critical thinking, analytical skills. I think I've stressed enough on how important it is in your subjective paper and even at your interview stage to have critical, to not just have, but to be able to showcase your critical thinking and analytical skills. Because description and just having knowledge is not enough. You also need to show that you have the ability to use and implement the correct knowledge at the correct time. So for that, you really need to hone your critical thinking and analytical skills. Like I mentioned, the regular revision and practice, mock interviews. Of course, you can leave it for the later stage. So after you've given your written examination, there's a gap of about 2 months for you to prepare for your interview. So yeah, so either you can take up online mock interviews, you can sit down with friends, you can sit down with previous law clerks if you know them, or just in front of the mirror and practice doing these interviews. They would be really helpful for you. Then this is just like a small chart that I had created to show you how can you work on upscaling your skills. So this is just a draft. So for example, here, if I have to develop certain things, certain skills, so I've written, oh, in progress, achieved, up next. And then the two columns will like, oh, the skills I need to develop and the trainings I have to go. So you can see ethics, integrity. So these are all the skills and the trainings that I would say are important for the perspective of the clerkship. Ethics and integrity, critical thinking, decision making, analytical skills, problem solving. Then you have legal research skills, the trainings I have to undergo, maybe mock interviews, maybe for legal technological tools if you're not adept in using SCC or LexisNexis or Westlaw, maybe brush up on those skills and learn them. Understanding about data privacy and security, and of course, the writing and the research process. So you can just like make these columns and rows for yourself to see what skills you need to develop and what trainings if you require to go, and then where you stand with the status. So it will just help you upscale your own skills because like I mentioned previously, you are the best judge for yourself. And to prepare for a highly competitive exam like this, you need to be really realistic with yourself while being super hopeful as well. But then at the preparatory stage, you need to be realistic about what you cannot do, what you need to do. So this is just like a small example of how you can just go about your skill sets. Yes, now we'll come about the career opportunity after clerkship. So, of course, there are many career opportunities after clerkship, and you can do like almost everything. These are just like the top four one I would say that the clerkship would be super helpful for. Number one is, of course, to pursue a career in litigation because you will have a good amount of experiences and connections in the Supreme Court. What you will learn is how the other side of the bench works, which is extremely important. You will understand to have a neutral point of view because you will be reading the case from the point of view of both the petitioner and the opposite party, and then you'll have to analyze and come to a conclusion. You'll also see how judges work, how they read the files, what are the key ingredients they are looking for in a file. So when you practice as advocates, you can ensure those things are available in your file. So the judges can easily skim through it, and also then your file would not be just dismissed for something absolutely on the face of it missing. It will also help you understand how they come to a particular judgment, a conclusion. So it gives you like a really good insight about the functioning of not just the Supreme Court, but also the functioning of judiciary and judges, which can come really handy when you're on the other side practicing advocacy. Again, you can become like now Supreme Court clerkship experience is being counted for advocate on record. So that is an amazing news. And you can really get the exposure to a pool of practical knowledge in the day-to-day workings of the court and apply it in your advocate on record exam as well. So this is just an added bonus because it was not there like years ago, but it has just been like a recent addition to it. Of course, working as a law clerk would also help you prepare for judiciary, UPSC, or other competitive law exams. This is not to say that you will have enough time to pursue or prepare for any of this while your clerkship, but it will, because your clerkship would be so all encompassing and challenging that later on when you if you plan to prepare for any exams you will have quite insight. So if you plan to prepare while you're doing your clerkship, it would be a really difficult call because your clerkship takes up most and almost all of your time. You would be working 7 days a week. There's barely any holiday, and it is a really hectic, and it requires your attention to detail to everything. So, but then at the same time, because you will pick up on all these skills and all these research skills and all these laws, it will really help you in the future. And the fourth category that I've put in is like, if you want to pursue higher research, if you want to enter into academics and research field, or even go for higher studies with a good educational institution within India abroad, clerkship will really help you with all of these things. Again, not to say that the clerkship would not help in any other career prospects, but these are just the top four from top of my head. So now, in terms of what resources are available very easily, so the important judgments and all. Like I mentioned, the Supreme Court did release it last year. So here's to hoping it will again release a list of important judgments for this year as well. So you should keep an eye out on for that. Then just there's a sample Q&A guide, which I hope a lot of you have already gone through if you're preparing for the exam for this year. If not, you must. Supreme Court released it last year, a sample Q&A guide, and it really well explains the kind of questions that would come, the kind of answers that should be written for both objective and for subjective. So it is available on the Supreme Court website, so I would highly recommend you going through this. Previous year question and answer, of course. So previous year question papers again are available on the Supreme Court website, so you should go through it. The law clerk scheme is again released. The scheme was released in 2024. It's a long scheme. Not much has changed for 2025. For 2025, there's the detailed advertisement, the last part, where whatever changes in terms of the dates and other things are there. You can look at it. The online application for registration, there's a notice regarding syllabus. So and then I have intensively written about Supreme Court tips and tricks. So I call it my own Supreme Court Law Clerkship Insight series on LinkedIn. You will find a lot of information there also if you want. So these are some really easily on the face of it available resources for the exam that you must go through, especially like the Supreme Court resources, which is available. You must know it inside out. I would highly recommend you being serious and really strict and disciplined about it. So yeah, this is to like a give you a very quick on what all I have covered in the Insight series. So I've already so if you go on LinkedIn and you type it, you will find it. You will find that I've looked into the format and type of questions in both part 1 and 2. There's guidance on interview. There's tips and tricks on how to make the brief, do the legal research about the selection process, what judges look for, how to again master the interview, how to make briefs, the must-read judgments, there's preparation strategies, there's 2025 exam syllabus, introduction to all of this, what are the essential areas of focus, more interview advice about the exam pattern, the questions that you should ask during your interview, the tips for selecting the judges for SC clerkship preferences, because I know a lot of you are confused about how do we choose and give preference for judges. So I've also written about that, the tips on how you should do it, the questions about the experience and background that you should prepare for an interview, what are the key considerations before accepting clerkship, career counseling, terms and conditions, interview, and then I also did a webinar with Manupatra last year, so that is also available. There were key takes away from that. So this is primarily what I've covered in the Supreme Court Law Clerkship Insight series that is available and accessible for all of you if you want to have a look. Now coming to the FAQs. So these were the most asked questions about the Supreme Court law clerkship. So, what qualities or experiences do Supreme Court judges look for in a law clerk? So, about this, I would say, of course, if you have a judicial internship, it is always adding to it. It is definitely beneficial because then you already have some sort of insight on what judges want and what kind of briefs they want, what kind of work they want, their general expectations on day to day. Otherwise, also, even if you don't have a judicial internship, you do not have to worry or fret much about it. What judges want is basically for somebody who's hardworking with good research skills. I mean, throughout this workshop, this webinar also, I've been really emphasizing on the research skills and the critical, analytical, and thinking skills because they are really important for the judge, that you are able to critically analyze because you will be assisting them in making legal jurisprudence, framing legal jurisprudence at times, and then writing judgments and assisting with the research. There would be so many times when you would come across a question that has never been answered before. That means you will be answering it for the first time. And that requires immense knowledge and that requires a lot of analytical skill and research skill. So, definitely, as mentioned throughout, these are some of the skills that you must hone and you should sharpen it. What are the most challenging aspects of being a Supreme Court clerk? I would say it is the inability to have a work-life balance because working at a Supreme Court means you're always working. You would barely have a day off or vacation. It's mostly a 7 days work week. If you're lucky enough, you will get one day off in a week. There is no such thing as gazetted holidays or even when there are vacations in terms of the winter or the summer. Otherwise, you would be behind the scenes working on some judgments or trying to, just like get the backlog cleared. So, I think the limited time for yourself and for things beyond work is one of the most challenging part of Supreme Court clerkship. Apart from that, I would say the fact that you always have to be there has to be the attention of detail that requires in the job is high, and it's also that a very continuous process. So it's not like that you're focusing on like for like an hour and then you can chill the another hour because you get some admin work or something. You're continuously working on really important matters that a lot of times they shape the legal discourse of the nation and otherwise. So you have to be focused at all times, so which can be exhausting. So together, I would say A, being focused all times, which is already exhausting, and then B, having limited time for recreational activities can be super challenging. So that I would say would be the most challenging aspect of being a Supreme Court law clerk. What areas of the law are to be covered for preparation? So like I've already mentioned, you will be looking at the Constitution of India, of course, then you'll be looking at the procedural laws, you'll be looking at CPC, you'll be looking at CRPC, IPC, Evidence Act. So all the major acts are what primarily takes away major chunk of the objective part. Um, Otherwise, of course, the sky is the limit. But yeah, primarily these are the acts that you should be looking at. Is there any set pattern to be followed for writing decent answers in the exam? So there is if you look at the sample guide that I said is available on the Supreme Court website, it actually tells you on how to write those answers. And it is a really, really helpful tool. You must go and see it. For example, I can tell you about, for example, the first question was about the brief preparation. So in the brief preparation, you will be given a file that will contain all the details of the case. And then, in how, what it basically, and it's a really excellent way to also check on how well you can do, because that is something that you will be doing every day for your entire clerkship period. Is preparing briefs is one thing that is constant. Rest work may or may not come on a daily basis, but brief would always be there, and you would be preparing, like, depending on how many clerks are there and how busy the office is, between like 10 to 30 briefs a day. So of course you will not have, it's basically you will not have so much time to invest on every single file, and you will have to sieve out all the relevant information and laws and legal provisions in that particular duration, and keep doing it and again for all the files. So how do you go about that is basically, like it mentioned in the exam pattern also, that you will either get like an SLP, special leave to petition, you will have a criminal appeal or a civil appeal, or you will have a writ petition. So for any of the first three, not the writ petition, it would have come from either challenging an impugned judgment of the High Court or an appellate tribunal. So you will be looking at the relevant facts, you will be looking at the provisions, you will be looking at what the courts have said before, then you will be focusing on the impugned judgment in more detail about, for example, if it's a high court, it's coming from a high court, you would be looking at what, if it's a criminal case, you would be looking at what evidence and how the high court came to that particular decision, what was the ratio, what did the high court say in the end. Then you will be writing about the issues that has come forward in Supreme Court, the grounds for the appeal or the SLP, and the prayer. So this is a rough format that you need to follow for preparation of a brief. And then at every point, you would give a signage on where you've taken it from. So which page number, which paragraph number. So it's easier. So you'll have like a one bullet point that says, oh, this incident happened here. And then for the more details, there's going to be like a paragraph and a page number. So I can just refer to the original file for it. So this is super helpful and throughout your legal life, actually. So this is one example for like a set pattern in terms of writing decent answer. For the other two also, everything is mentioned in the sample guide Q&A, so please do look at it. Now, as a final year law student, what ability or knowledge should one expertise to really stand out for? Okay, so like I mentioned, apart from legal knowledge, it's the research skills and it's the analytical skills. I cannot emphasize enough. You might think I've been repeating it since the first slide, but it's because how true and how important they are. So please just sharpen your research skills, your writing skills, and your analytical skills. If you're confused about it, reach out to me later or just like Google it. You will get enough resources about this. This is not something to be really worried about. You can really overcome this. Now, about what are the common challenges faced in the Supreme Court law clerkship exam and how can they be overcome? So, I would say it really depends person to person of which aspect of the clerkship exam are you most worried about. I know some people who worried more about the objective side. Some are more worried about subjective, and some are just worried about the interview because that's what scares them. So, it really depends on you. What are you more afraid of? if you are afraid of objective type questions, you need to focus more on that. I mean, anyway, I think right now, if your focus should be on just the objective and the subjective part and not so much on the interview, because you will have ample amount of time to prepare for it. So for now, keep your focus on the objective and the subjective part. If you have trouble in, I mean, the good thing is you have like a word limit here. So you don't have to worry about, oh, will I be able to finish my answers or not? Because ideally you should be, because there's a very strict word limit and you must adhere to that. So the challenge you might face is sieving out the relevant facts and the provision and the information um, from the file to write the subjective part. So for that, you really need to practice reading judgments and reading files if you can. If you're interning, read your files carefully. If you've interned before, when you have any access, read those files carefully. Read the sample guide. It also has the file, so you'll understand how to sieve out the relevant information. And if you don't have access to any files, I would really recommend you reading the judgments carefully. So when you read the judgments and you prepare the judgment summary, you'll also see you'll be writing about the relevant facts, the provisions, what happened before, and then what the Supreme Court said, right? And there are judgments which are like 100 pages long, 150 pages long. Try to make those judgment summary in one page. See if you can do that and try to capture everything. That will really help you understand and how to sieve out the relevant information and aspect from the irrelevant one, which can be a challenge for a lot of people. If you're worried about the MCQs, if you're worried about the timing, maybe time yourself for both the exam when you're practicing to see that you're able to carry out everything in a timely fashion. And for the objective, definitely after you've studied your provisions and your laws, just practice it. It would really help. So yeah, these were some of the most asked questions. So I just thought I'll just cover it up here in the presentation as well, so all of you can benefit from this. Now, so while I understand and appreciate that this, under 1 hour, there's only some limited amount of work that I can do. So if you are really preparing and you really want one-on-one insight, I have recently started to also provide one-on-one mentorship for Supreme Court Law Program, for which there's my TalkMate link. You can book through it. So yeah, I will help you tailor the advice according to what stage do you want it at, what confusion you have in terms of preparation and anything. Hopefully my own experience as a law clerk for 2 years would come in handy for you. And also in terms of how the research and the skills that I applied to and that I learned from clerkship has helped me where I am right now. So if you want a one-on-one guidance, I am available and you can book a session with me. And otherwise, also, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and you can connect with me on TalkMate and you can send me your question and I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. And if we have some time now, maybe we can also take some questions now here. That's just it from my side in terms of the presentation. I'll just stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you for the session, ma'am. We hope the participant, trust the participant found it knowledgeable. The participants have asked a lot of questions. We are just finalizing one or two to ask because
Yeah, of course.
one question we're getting asked is compared to other law exams or exams that a college student gives, how would you say that the Supreme Court clerkship exam is like relatively tougher than them or relatively easier compared to a exam say CLAT or semester exams the student faces?
I would say is totally different. Because how you learn your entire semester for one particular exam. The pattern is absolutely different. The kind of question is asked is absolutely different, and the purpose is also totally different. Your semester exams have a purpose of to just test your knowledge, but here it's competition. That is why it's called competitive exams. So the purpose is to just see out the best of the best. So it's structured in a way that not everybody can excel in it, unlike your college exams. So I would probably rate it difficult than your college exams. Yeah.
Audible now?
Yeah, 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 audible. Yeah, tell me.
Uh, Thank you, ma'am. The one more question is that, uh, like, as someone who is uh, like we have I've already discussed, how can a final year law student start preparing for this clerkship exam? How can a student who has just say started his law school is in like first or second year, how can he like prepare for it as a long term goal, as a like thing that he want the person wants to pursue after graduate? How can they start from the foundation level in the first or second year?
Wow, that's you have a lot of time if you're starting already in your first year, second year. So I would definitely say read. I mean, I think if you're doing your courseworks and if you're studying for your semesters properly and throughout, then you'll already have all the important statutes and the legal analysis in place. You will already have a lot of the landmark judgments in place. You will already have the ingredients of provisions in place. All you need to do is revise them and practice with the MCQs. So, just practice a lot of objective type questions. And also just for like everybody to read a lot of judgments, and I mean like full judgments. Like I mentioned, even if you're not reading the files and if you don't have access to files, if you just read the full judgments and try to make summary out of it would really help you out.
That's all from our side, ma'am. If then we can deliver the vote of thanks to the serious. Uh, so, in closing, we like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Prerna ma'am for accepting our invitation and delivering such informative session. We trust that the audience found it both interesting and knowledgeable. Participants who wish to know more about the Supreme Court clerkship and or wish to receive one-on-one mentorship, mentorship from ma'am can reach out to her at her topmed.io link. The link will be provided in the description of this video. Thank you again, ma'am, and we eagerly anticipate the opportunity to host you again.
Thank you so much. Would